Hi, everybody. My name is Louise Ping. Very excited to be here today to talk to you about the different migration options that we have here at AWS. So my career, just by the way, I don't have a background in storage or migration and transferring data, which is something that the majority of our folks here at AWS have. So for me to be able to understand moving and migrating your data to AWS, I needed to form an analogy for myself. So the analogy that I came up with was when you have to move your household. I think about the different things that I have in my house, the rooms, the kitchen, the bedroom, the bathroom, and what all that I need to move. I also think about the why. Why am I moving to a new place? So similar to that, when you think about moving your data to AWS, you'll want to think about why. Why are you migrating your data to AWS? Generally, you're doing it to perhaps free up on-prem servers, so you're moving your data into AWS to free up that space. Your productivity servers are open and ready to use. Or you'll be creating a data lake. So that's another reason you might be moving to AWS. So that's kind of one of the ways I've been thinking about it. The other thing that I like to think about when it comes to moving my data to AWS, so going back to the home analogy, is what am I moving? So similar to when you move your data to AWS, what are you moving to AWS? So is it a NAS or SAN server? Is it a database? Maybe it's an SFTP server because you've decided that you don't want to pay for that expensive commercial licensing cost. So kind of keeping that in mind of what you're moving. So similar to like the home analogy, you're not going to use the same box that you use to move your dishes, your clothing, and perhaps your couch, because not everything will just fit in there and move smoothly. So let's talk about a few of the different services that we have here at AWS. This is not a fully comprehensive list. What we're focusing on today is object, block, and file. So we want to make sure that we have the right tools for you when you think about moving your data to the cloud using block, file, or object. So going from left to right, AWS Transfer Family. So I work with the AWS Transfer Family, so obviously that's my favorite. But they are a B2B data exchange. So think about when you need to bring external data into your AWS ecosystem. So what I'm talking about is, say you've decided to subscribe to some market analysis reports, or maybe you need data to come and be consolidated into a centralized location. So you'll use AWS Transfer Family in order to centralize all of that external data into your ecosystem. Next, let's talk a little bit about data sync. So data sync is also one of my favorites. I worked on them for a little bit. So data sync is used for unstructured movement of data into AWS, or if you would like to move data in between different AWS storage services. So data sync is a great online tool for doing that. Next, you've got cloud migration. So cloud migration helps you move that structured data directly into AWS over network. As I keep going down, I've got database migration services. So DMS, or database migration services, lets you move commercial data, or commercial databases, excuse me. So we're talking like Oracle, for example, move that into AWS. So you can either replicate or you can migrate that database into AWS. As I keep going along, also, we've got Snow Family. So Snow Family is great because it provides a physical device. So you put all of your data into that physical device, and then you ship it to AWS. That way, you don't have to worry about bandwidth or networking issues. So that actually kind of frees up any issues that you might, like if you were in a remote location, for example. Finally, we have Storage Gateway. So Storage Gateway actually has 3 different flavors. We've got file server, virtual tape libraries, and block storage volumes. So kind of keep in mind that we probably have a version that'll work for you. And Storage Gateway is used if you want to keep your on-prem applications, but you want to put your data in the cloud, and you need to have access to that data via your on-prem applications. Okay, so now that we've been thinking about why we're moving our data to AWS and what we're moving to AWS, let's talk about the different online versus offline migrations. So on the left-hand side, you have the online version options. So you've got Transfer Family, Data Sync, Cloud Endure Migration, Database Migration Services, and you've got Storage Gateway. So how I like to think about why am I moving my data via online methods, we're going to go back to the house analogy. So when you move into a house, what do you need to have at your fingertips the moment you move into your house? Is it your pet stuff, kids stuff? Maybe it's your coffee maker? So For me, I'd say coffee maker. But again, what do you need to have move as quickly as possible to the cloud so that it doesn't negatively impact your business? So you want to kind of keep that in mind in deciding if you're moving via online or offline methodologies. Next, you'll want to think about, okay, is my data available to move into the cloud? And do I have the bandwidth to do so? So sometimes you might think you have the bandwidth, but then again, maybe as the day goes by and you have like a lot of people working off of your network, that might decrease a little bit. So you kind of want to keep that in mind. And thinking about whether your data is ready to move or not is another thing you should think about. So how I looked at that, again, coming from outside of storage and migration and transferring anything to AWS, I thought about it like junk drawers in my house. So, you know, how many junk drawers do you have? And if you're going to move those junk drawers into a new house, chances are you're probably going to want to organize it and make sure that it is ready to go. And so you want to make sure that what you don't want to have moved, you kind of get rid of that. So it's kind of the same concept in making sure that the data that you would like to move to AWS is in the right spot and it's ready to go. The next thing I want to talk to you about is direct connect. So even if you are not sure about the bandwidth, but you'd still like to move your data online, you can look into using direct connect. So what direct connect does, it provides a direct pipeline between your data center and AWS. So that dedicated line makes it super fast to move your data into AWS. So Data Sync, again, one of my favorites, is a great product to use in conjunction with direct connect in order to do that. So let's say that the first three questions were kind of a no. So then, in order to think about whether or not to move your data offline via offline methodologies, which is Snow family, think about, is it okay if that data is offline while I move it? So you probably won't have access to that data while it's in motion, so you want to kind of keep that in mind. Also, you'll want to keep in mind that it does take days, and it does not more than just minutes or hours to move that data. So you want to think about all of these aspects as you start working through what of our tools you would like to use. Okay, so now we've been talking about why you're moving your data to AWS, what you're moving to AWS, if you're using online or offline. So let's say what type of data are you moving? So production data versus backup and archive data. So when I look at production data, I think of it as data that I absolutely need to have or my business is not going to work. Like it's essential to my business, my people need it ASAP. So that's considered production data because it's often stored on high-performing tier 1 storage that can easily be managed. So the other thing to think about is backup. So backup and archive are the most common ways that people start moving their data into AWS. Backup is a secondary copy of your production data. So you'll want to think of it like if there's loss or corruption, disaster, or security breach, God forbid, then you could still continue your normal operations because you have a secondary copy of your production data available. So if you're going to archive your data, that's where you want to retain inactive or cold or older data sets. So you don't want to necessarily throw it away, but you still want to keep it someplace accessible. So how I kind of like to think about that is if you have on-prem servers and those are what you use for productivity, but let's say they're getting full. So then what you'd want to do is clear up some of those servers, move some of that data off of those servers so you can still run your business. So if I go back to the home analogy, it's kind of like, do you have enough closet space? How do you remove some things out of your closet, move it someplace else to store, and that way you can add more stuff into your closets. So we've been talking a bit about the different types of data and what you should be thinking about as you move your data. So let's take a look at this slide. It's kind of a lot, but bear with me. So this slide, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into production data. So production data, again, you have to keep in mind that this is essential data that you need for your daily business. So if you look at this slide, I'm just going to start from the middle. So you've got Data Sync, Cloud Endure, and database migration services. So those three they move your data from your on-prem servers into AWS. So depending on what you're moving, if you're moving a database, if you're moving unstructured data, or if you're moving structured data. So kind of keep that in mind. So likely you'll use one of those to move your data directly into AWS. Now, in order to make sure that you have all of that information available to you, plus you want to have outside information to kind of give color to what you've already put in your system, you'll use transfer family. So let's say you've subscribed to some market analyst reports, or let's say you have other information that's coming from a vendor or a partner, then you'll add transfer family into that mix. So what transfer family will do is you'll use that to deploy an endpoint in S3 or EFS, and then that will directly drop, all that information will directly drop using the same clients and applications from those vendors and partners, will just drop it directly into your bucket. So let's say on the other hand, you've decided, okay, but like I've got some tape backups and they're kind of getting old and I'm worried about degradation. So then you're going to want to think about using Storage Gateway as another piece perhaps, so that you can use like the tape version of Storage Gateway in order to access that data that you place in the cloud via the on-prem application. So then last, of course, but not least, is Snow Family. So Snow Family you'll use to make sure that anything that's in a remote location or that has questionable bandwidth, that you can take that, put it into a device, ship it to us, and have us put that in the cloud for you. Once everything is in the cloud, if you look at the holistic view of this and all the different products that we have, and you've used a set of these products to move your data into AWS, from there you can create a data lake, you can form AI/ML. So any one of these options are open to you once the data is in AWS. So I have a customer currently who's trying to create a data lake. They're not trying, they're actually succeeding, excuse me. But they're going to use data sync to move that data from their on-prem servers into AWS. So that's going to keep going. And they're going to use the data throttling feature in order to make sure that the bandwidth throttling feature in data sync to make sure that they can optimize their bandwidth usage depending on the time in the day. Meanwhile, they also have subscribed to some market analyst reports, as well as they have some vendors that bring in data that they'd like to have added into that data lake. So they've created the endpoints using AWS Transfer Family, and those endpoints are there in their S3 so that they can also add that to their data lake to get the full view of their ecosystem and their market. Okay, so let's talk about backup and archive. So backup and archive, so backup is the most common use case that we've seen for customers today, simply because in the world that we're in now, and we've all heard about ransomware and security breaches and whatnot, so knowing that that is out there, our customers are looking to us to back up their data so that their production data is not affected by this negative force that's out there. So by moving their stuff by backing up their data, it not only frees up their on-prem servers, but also with archiving, they can have that long-term retention. So the data is archived, and then they can use it whenever they need it, and they know it's safe and it's compliant. So the different options that we have for our customers include, so going from left to right, so we've got data sync. Again, data sync allows you to schedule things so that you can decide when you want to move that cold data into AWS. So you can schedule that timing out to kind of optimize everything from the bandwidth to like when you would like to move that information. Then next, you've got Storage Gateway. Actually, you've got Snow Family. So Snow Family allows you, again, to move data via physical devices into AWS. So you can then have your data offline, you're not using it, and that way you can move it into AWS and it'll get here in a few days. Storage Gateway. So Storage Gateway has a tape, a volume, and a file version. So depending on how you want to move your data into AWS, you will decide which ones to use. And each one of those allows you to have a local cache so that the most recent data is available to you on-prem, but then you can access the rest of that data in the cloud. So the last piece, can't forget our partners. So we've got an immense ecosystem of partners, APN partners, so AWS Partner Network partners. So these partners build secure, efficient, and cost-effective backup and restore solutions. So you want to kind of keep that in mind as you decide what tool to use. The solutions are directly integrated with AWS Storage, so it reduces operational complexity and costs. So between our technical partners that build these solutions, and we have solutions integrators that are here to help you implement and figure out what combination of these tools work best for you, just keep in mind of these partners that you might decide to leverage. So At the end of the day, we have a ton of different options here at AWS, and do not feel overwhelmed, because believe me, I felt overwhelmed when I came over here because there's so many different options. But if you just kind of think about what you're actually doing, why you're doing it, how you want to move that data via online or offline, and is it production or backup data or archive data that you're moving, by narrowing that field, it will help you decide exactly what tools, and I'm using tools in plural, what you would like to use out of our entire lineup of products. Cool.
Thank you.